Hello.
Hello.
We should be playing Life with Blood Atlanta. Unfortunately, Dangle couldn't make it tonight. We should be playing tomorrow. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So instead, we are just going to continue with our Werewolf the Apocalypse book discussion.
I believe we left on chapter 2.
Mm-hmm. That is indeed where we left off. Getting into the meat and potatoes of Werewolf.
Yes.
Well, kind of looking forward to talking about this last time because it kind of goes into the Garu's relationship with humanity.
Yeah. A bit.
Yeah, the first part starts with their, the past stuff, I believe, because the chapter being labeled a Being Garu.
Hmm. Keeping humanity in check is hotly contested among Garu. Heck yeah, it is.
Do one of you want to lead this one?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, Shadows of the Past it's essentially, I'm reading through it as we go here, just refreshing my memory. It's just an intro to where Garu lore starts from. Talks a little bit about the connection between the worm, the weaver, and the wild, and where the Garu fit into all this. And then it gets into the Impergium, which is when the werewolves ran rampant and kind of got a little bit trigger happy, pretty much. And they kind of did a lot of damage to other what's the word they use? Feyla. There were other changing folk besides the werewolves themselves, but a lot of them got purged, for lack of a better word, and that alongside the damage they did to the human populace, is actually kind of where the whole fear of the werewolves, that instinctual fear that humans have of werewolves in their real nasty forms, which we'll talk about later, that's actually where that comes from. And so after seeing when that's said and done, they kind of sat down and said, okay, we need to put some rules in place so that this doesn't happen again, because that was obviously a bad idea. And so that's where that kind of gets into. It talks about how the Garu kind of discussed exactly how much of a hand in human society they want to have, and kind of where their idea of an equivalent to the masquerade itself came from, and also how the Garu nation formed and the sociopolitical structures such as they are came of that.
Are they still calling it the Garu Nation?
I think that's
As it was known, so no longer. It seems to be a historical structure now.
Okay.
Because the Guru have become so splintered in recent history, I don't think it's considered the Guru Nation anymore.
It's weird. Do they have a name for it now, or is it just nothing?
I believe it's just the Guru. I don't think they have an official, like, broadened structure anymore. Here's an interesting bit that I was talking about a little while ago with the Black Spiral dancers. Modern Guru scholars hang their heads in shame as they recall such events as the slaughter of Guru and kin in North America and the subjugation of the Philippine. I apologize. I'm not going to try and pronounce that because I will terribly butcher that. Skipping a little bit ahead.
What page are you on?
I am on page 39.
Oh, so we skipped the Imperagnum and the silver and stuff. Okay.
I very quickly went through it because it's a lot of very
right. I
kind
just
of
didn't
broad.
know what page you skipped to.
Yeah, sorry. The White Howlers fell sway to the worm and reforged themselves in its image as the Black Spiral Dancers. So yeah, that's the tribe that I was talking about that wholesale went rogue.
Yeah. Interesting.
Lucille. Yep. Over time, untold tribes and camps suffered or chose similar destruction, whether at the fangs and claws of other Guru, through choices to ally themselves with foul forces, or through abstention entirely from once sacrosanct compacts with Gaia. So even the ones that sat on the fence and chose to do nothing eventually fell sway to the corruption of the worm.
Well, I mean, that kind of makes sense. If they sat on the fence and didn't do anything, then why wouldn't they fall to the corruption?
Yep. Makes sense.
And then it jumps into auspices and the tribes. So it was called tribes.
Oh, yeah.
I like that they creatures of duality, inheritors of rage and spirit.
They're pretty cool.
I can't get over how good they do describing that, like the stuff in this book.
Mm-hmm. So, without further ado, I guess we're getting into auspices then.
I mean, unless there was more you wanted to skim over for the other stuff.
That was really about it. After the loss of the White Howlers, it's just like everything fell apart.
Yeah.
That's essentially the next 3 paragraphs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Auspice, it is the Guru revere a set of traditional cultural roles imparted by Luna. For those of you that can't put 2 and 2 together, that is the moon. Sister to Gaia. A werewolf's auspice is their moon sign, almost always in alignment with the lunar phase at the time of their first change, not when they were born. One's auspice implies a role among Guru society, an expectation of temperament, and a suggested set of responsibility, and the Guru venerate high degrees of competency in the craft of auspices. So yeah, without further ado, there are
I do think
1,
we
2,
should
3,
hit
4.
all of the auspices there.
Yeah, absolutely. There are 5. Am I counting that right? 5 auspices
Yes.
that correspond with the phases of the moon. There is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to start on the auspices. auspices because we can do the tribes after.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I don't know what you were going to say.
I was just going to read through the auspices, but if you want to, you can go ahead.
I guess we'll start first with our Ragabash. Is that what the... Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like Bruja. Questioning authority, challenging unexamined tradition, mocking what's worthy of derision. That's interesting. So it's like that's the one that provides the checks and balances, I guess?
Checks and balances in the form of tricksters. They're...
See, that doesn't scream trickster to me, though, in that sentence right there. It says to question
No,
authority, challenge unexamined tradition, and mock what's worthy of derision.
Yeah, it doesn't, but that's kind of, that's Ragabash's, and it talks about them in greater detail a little bit later, which I simultaneously love and don't love about the book because I want to get into it all as soon as it comes up. But no, traditionally the Ragabash are played as the wise trickster, the one that is allowed to mock the crazy plans of the bloodthirsty leader, the one that points out the flaws in any plan, just the sarcastic,
So same role
partial
as the
levity.
same role as the court jester.
I was just thinking that because the court jester in like the medieval society, that's what they were. They played off of the ruling, whatever court they were in. They mocked them to give them the only kind of like feedback that they would get that they couldn't really or shouldn't do much about. But they were also the ones that like they brought news and they made people question things and think things that they didn't think before.
Yes.
Like
yes, that's very much.
It's turned into kind of a derisive thing now, but I don't think at the time that it was. Like they were the only ones that could get away with mocking the authority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very much what the Ragabash typically do. And I've seen that played very well. I've seen that played very badly because some people have used it in the past as free license to be a dick, which is not what it's supposed to be.
It sounds like it could very easily take the role of like the fish Malkavian or whatever that is called, where they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, definitely.
We can skip farther down if you just want to go heavier into the auspices. I don't know what page it's on, but we can skip to that as long as we like say what page it is.
Yeah. Let me scroll. And we're probably gonna want to double back at least a little bit because there's a lot of good information on like the first change in the litany that.
Oh yeah, I just we don't have to go chapter by chapter. We can hit the auspices right now. Oh, 55 it says.
Yeah. Chapter 3. It starts on 55. But you really get into like the descriptions on page 56 because 55 is like the opening paragraphs.
Yeah, why don't we hit auspices and then if we have time we can do the tribes and then we'll double back to chapter 2.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, about the Ragabash, who is the greater fool, the headstrong dipshit or the knuckleheads who follow him willingly into folly?
The new moon.
And they are the sign of the new moon. Kind of makes sense.
Given the greatest latitude to challenge traditions and question the way things have been done. So pretty much like we had said. Not least because the way things have always been done resulted in the apocalypse. Whoops.
play, Ragabash might expect to trick a stubborn opponent, misdirect an unsuspecting human conspirator, mock a more renowned werewolf, and sneak past an overconfident sentry. So, I want to say very Rogue Bard-esque, if you want to make a D&D comparison.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, for sure.
Then, any other thoughts on Ragabash?
Not currently. It seems like there's nothing wrong with playing that one, obviously. It will be an interesting one if someone decides to do it in a group, but I think it is one that you have to take care on so it doesn't turn into a joke.
Schmuck.
Mm-hmm. What was that, Ned?
Fish milk.
Yeah.
No fish mouth.
This could be a very fun and interesting one to have in a group, but again, also very easy to play badly.
Funny little side note: there was a whole race of shifters who were coyote shifters who were actually banned from a lot of tables for similar things. Not only did they have ridiculous powers, but they were often played as very stereotypical trickster, rogue, I do my own thing regardless of what the group wants.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
There's a lot of really neat shape changers out there that are not werewolf specific. With that said, on to the theurge.
Yes. Spirits have an elaborate language and their movements are nuanced and meaningful. Continue to treat them as disposable fools, and you will find that they have abandoned you in your time of greatest need. The theurge look very interesting.
I figured you would be very interested in them because they're your oh, I'm trying to see if there's a bit. They're your mystics.
Yes.
They're the ones that are deeply connected to the Umbra and do a lot of the communication with spirits, consecrations of the cairn, communication with Gaia if that happens.
Mm-hmm. In play, you might expect to summon a reluctant juggling, invoke ancient pacts of comradeship, placate revered elders with their service, and even bind rogue gafflings. Whatever those are. I'm sure we'll get to those later.
Yeah, they're types of spirit, from what I've been able to tell. So yeah, they're the fun ones.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all fun, but I particularly find them very interesting.
That could be a very fun one to play in a very like I said, they could be weird or sage-like. That's the village elder, the wise woman, the wizened teacher, the quintessential old man stereotype.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's dangerous to go alone, old man type.
Mm-hmm. They're definitely gonna especially be key in groups if you expect to do a lot of exploration into the Umbra, because they're supposed to be the ones that can not only get in and out relatively easier than most other Guru, they're also the ones that are supposed to be able to navigate it a little bit more accurately. Mm. So yeah, if you're gonna walk the Umbra, take a theurge.
Yeah. Now the Phylodox.
Yeah, I've never been entirely sure on the pronunciation of that one. I've heard Phylodox, I've heard Philodox. I'm not entirely sure. Do our ways exalt tradition, or do they further justice? Can they do both? These are your your judges, your experts in law, as the guru have them, the champions of
mediators.
justice. Yeah.
And play might be expected to evaluate secrets a KG ally has discovered, interpret the meeting behavior behind an errant packmate, punish unrepentant transgressors in a moot, judge the virtues of a daring raid, and after having collect all aspects of a matter. So yeah, they're the guru lawyers.
This is also another one that I've seen a lot of people play. Stereotypically to a fault. They're the ones that are more likely to actually their way through a campaign.
The rules lawyers.
Or yeah. And I've seen a lot of holdups happen with especially if there's too many Feyla in a group. I mean, usually one's fine, two, maybe more than that, you're just asking for trouble. Because everyone's going to have their own interpretation of what a law means.
Yeah, then you get the Roman Senate at 2.
Yeah. I'm sure that hasn't come up at all anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't really have any other thoughts on that one. I mean, that one could be fun to play, and it would also be a really good way to introduce players, like new players, into the world of the guru when you have one character who's played it many times before, or at least knows the rules really well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that would be a really easy way to introduce like a new pack of newly turned guru, is to stick them with an older player, like a player who's played a few times and really knows the rules, as like the Phylodox of that group.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the photo of the Galliard, which is the next one on our list. It reminds me of the Nicolas Cage meme.
Yes.
Which I guess is...
Oh, go ahead.
Go for it. No, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to read the thing so you can continue.
Go for it. No, I was just going to make a stupid comment about the Nick Cage thing. Go ahead, read.
Hear me as I sing the song of the wolves we are, the people we can be, and the legends we shall become. It is a song of both tragedy and mastery, of horror and heroism. I love that so much. Like, that right there would make me want to play Galliard.
These are your true-blooded bards. Like they are. While the Phylodox was the rules keeper, these are the lore keepers. They're the ones that take the time to record and remember guru history, the deeds that have been performed to certain clans or cairns or individuals. Yeah, they're bards through and through.
I mean, so far it's been very interesting because, I mean, with the Ragabash, we have the why we don't do this. The Thurge is like the soul of it. The Phylodox is why we do things, and the Galliard is what has been done.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. They'll play off each other very well. But yeah, the Galliards are regale other werewolves of fables and legends, and hype up the other packmates.
bluster their way past a sentry.
Yeah. Okay, Haley.
Very charisma based.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is the face. This is the face of the group.
Definitely. What you think, Nen? You think William could pass as a Galliard?
Yes. Not a great liar, but he can pass as one.
What do you think Tori would be if she was, what her auspice would be if she were Guru?
I don't know. That's a really hard one to say. Well, there's one we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, maybe we should reconsider that after the last one has been gotten to, because I'm very interested. And just so you guys know, I did. Now he's not going to be mad at me for this. I did ask Dangle what auspice he thought Javier was, and he said Galliard, and I can 100% see it.
I didn't think that was even in question.
Well, I thought it with the way he's able to perform the rituals to like see into the future and speak with the beasts. I figured it was a toss up between Theurge and Galliard. So I asked him, and
he didn't really do magic. I don't know. But
magic is kind of weird.
Charismatic. He was a talker. He talked to the worm, and like that's a big thing for Galliards. I thought is that they learn the why behind the lore and stuff. So like that totally screams Javier to me. This one is not Tori, I don't think, but it is an interesting one that we should talk about. The Arun.
The one that nobody knows how to pronounce. Fun fact, out of all of the other ones, this one is the one whose pronunciation is argued about the most.
What are some of the pronunciations?
Arun, Arun. I've heard it's weird. Some of them don't make sense. Some of them do.
Around, because round is Round, but I don't know. I'm gonna pronounce it Arun.
Yeah, this is your barbarians, your heavy hitters. Claws go in, blood sprays out.
Yeah. Fuck you, worm. Steven? Is this one Steven?
Yes.
Which is funny, because he's the Malkavian of the group.
He was an impulse embrace.
They are often looked at for leadership in times of war, until further notice.
Yeah, this is usually where you see your pack leaders come out of.
Which is, I mean, it makes sense because the stronger become the leader, but the Galliards would probably make better leaders.
Yeah, and I think that also kind of says a lot about, especially in Werewolf 20th edition, kind of how they got to that point is having so many, for lack of a better word, bloodthirsty leaders.
Which
kind of sunk things.
I wonder if that's why the apocalypse came around.
One does, in fact, wonder.
Let's see. If we're going to talk about what we think our characters were, I could see Tori being Phylodox. I could see her being that. She's very methodical when she needs and wants to be and can be. Much like Steven, she obviously has come up in game. She was not supposed to be a
Gangrel.
gangrel. It doesn't suit her whatsoever. So I could see, honestly, I could see Thurge, Phylodox, or maybe Galliard, only in like the lore aspect of it, but Phylodox I think would fit her better. Although she, I don't know. Thurge might be the best fit. Not that she does a lot with spirits now, but she does a lot with animals, and I feel like that would relate more to that than the other one. And she did that even in like her mortal life.
Definitely, yeah.
What about Shiloh?
Oh god, that's a good question. I think it really kind of depends on what era Shiloh you're talking about. If you're going pre-Camarilla Shiloh, she probably would have leaned closer to Ragabash, but that was pretty well broken out of her during that time, so she'd probably maybe be closer to Galliard, maybe. Or at least she could be. She's kind of hard because she's definitely not like the spirit.
She doesn't talk
spiritual.
much.
No, she could if she ever gets out of her trauma rut.
But she probably won't. Let's be fair. Vampire isn't about getting out of those ruts.
Yeah. I mean, unless we'll see what happens. She could be Galliard if she gets out of her rut, but I don't know.
As she stands right now. What would she be?
As she stands right now, I'm going to. I'm gonna say Galliard. I'm gonna lock it in. Final answer, Galliard, because even though she would not do it well, that's what she was built for, like meta. And then she still has that potential to talk people down and stuff. She just doesn't use it properly because she's been scared out of it.
Meta Tori was originally built to be a brawler, so she would have fit Aru, and that's why I picked Gangrel in the first place. But as it stands currently, she would absolutely be Phylodox.
Yeah. And while I think,
no, I take that back. Even past, present Tori, like Phylodox, she's very. There are certain rules she's a very big stickler to. Lore interests her, but the why behind it interests her more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Phylodox all the way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for cutting you off. What were you going to say? Buttons.
I don't remember. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember what I was going to say, where that was.
What about your Detroit characters?
William's Galliard.
And Uriel is very solidly a Theurge.
I would say, let's see, Vincent. Let's see, what would Vincent be? I need to make this character soon, so I should figure this out. I think he might be Phylodox. He could also be Ragabash. Those would be the two I'd lean between. Actually, I think it would be the more... What?
Go ahead and continue.
It would be the cynical side of Ragabash.
I can see it. I can definitely see it.
That'll be fun. But yeah. Spoilers, he's gonna be that. What were you going to say, Nen?
About our Nicole scripted catchers characters. I would put Edgar and Aaron.
Rose is a Ragabash through and through.
I guess Gladys would be Phylodox.
Gladys is another one that's kind of hard to pin down because she doesn't fit neatly into the archetypes presented either.
I like complicated characters. It's fine. I don't know. I kind of see William as the Ragabash. He doesn't like do like he does music, but he hasn't really like
Particularly social.
It's not even the social part of it. Like
he hasn't actively
really hype people up. He doesn't like unite people behind something like that. But what he does is challenge people. He listens to Rufus, but not 100%. Like,
Right.
They may pull a practical joke or disrespect a vain opponent. That's, I think, much more William than Galliard.
Yeah. I mean, even look at the interaction. Look at that last interaction he had with Debbie, sticking his finger in her face when she was already pissed off. That is absolutely Ragabash behavior.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so anything else we want to be said on this?
I would kind of like to say that while these archetypes are very basic archetypes and you can see a lot of correlation to different other games, I think it's very important to find a happy medium in like finding a way to make these archetypes work for you when building your character, but also not leaning too heavily on them.
What do you mean?
If that makes sense. I mean, just like what I was. Yeah, just having the character you pull up be just a caricature of the archetype that
you need to
they're
build
set
a
with,
character before you assign that, I think.
Mhm. And I mean that's just all of these kind of maybe that's just kind of the thing with TTRPs in general is they're all based off of archetypes, and the part of the mission is to then expand that into a three-dimensional character that works for you and works for the setting and works with the other player characters.
See, here's the difference. What I see as the difference between World of Darkness and the other TTRPGs that we've played. In the other TTRPGs, in D&D, you build your character, right? Everything you do is based on a class you've picked. Everything. What stats you want, what you're good at, what your character knows, everything is based off your class. In World of Darkness, it even I'm fairly certain it specifically states that when you build your character, you build the human first. You should be thinking about the human aspect. Why do they know these things? What makes them know this? Like, I'll use Tori because my character. When I built her, the stats that I first gave her, almost all of them, I built her to be a human. A lot of her specialties don't come up or anything like that because she was a vet. So she has medicine, she has science, she has other things that very rarely come up in play. And I thought about that before I built the gangrel part of it or the vampire part of it. You don't do that in other TTRPGs. You don't build a level 0 character in D&D and then pick a class. You build a class. You build a character based on a class.
Yeah, even the one time we tried doing the level 0 thing, we were still building to the potential class that we were going to take once we got past the level 0.
In World of Darkness, it does make sense that you want a character to align well with what they're doing, unless you're subverting it. But there's still a very big difference as to you want to build a character. You want to build a human before you build a vampire or a werewolf or a hunter. Because they were beforehand.
Yeah. And I personally think Tori is an amazing example of that. Like, even though she's got all these things, she does go against type in some places and she does go with type in some places. And that nuance is really what makes the character a good character, in my opinion.
It makes her fun to play because she's not one-dimensional. She wasn't built to be a gangrel. And when you built it's easy to do with NPCs. If you're building an NPC gangrel, you're going to lean very heavily into the gangrel because it's easy. It's easier to remember, and you can still give them nuance and depth when you do that. But for just a one-off or a couple-off NPC that you don't expect to be a big deal, you lean into the guru side of things. But the nuances is what makes World of Darkness stand out. Because as I said, you build a human first. Or you give reasons behind what you are. You don't just pop up out of the ground and be like, oh, I am a new gangrel. Everything I know is based on gangrel. That's... meh. Because you're often picked for a reason. And that reason often aligns with the pack or the clan. And again, this is vampire. Because I don't really know how the change happens for Guru and how it picks what your tribe is. But at least for vampire, it's very much you fit what they're looking for, but that's not all you are.
I believe with werewolf, it's what moon you're on whenever your first change occurs.
It's what?
No.
Okay.
No, that was Auspice. To answer the question in a nutshell, clan is a social thing. It is what group is going to accept you.
Oh, sorry,
Sometime,
example we were talking about.
yeah. The it used to be partially hereditary, especially with certain packs, or tribes, excuse me. However, since Werewolf 5 has done away with the whole breeding standard thing, which I think was a good call.
Yeah.
It's a social thing.
So you can change tribes.
Sort of. You can
If it's a social thing, you should be able to change it.
Yeah, you can. It's kind of one of those once you're part of the pack, you're part of the pack for life things, to use the colloquialism. Unless there are very specific circumstances like the corruption of the Black Spiral Dancers.
Well, I'm not saying it would be easy, but if it is strictly a social thing, you theoretically could leave your pack and go find a new one. Or leave your tribe and go find a new one.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be easy by any means.
No. And the other part of it is each tribe has like a guiding spirit.
Yeah.
Quote unquote. And so if a particular spirit takes a liking to you, that's a way to indicate that you're in this tribe now, even if you've never interacted with another guru a day in your life.
Well, I'm just saying, like, say you're, I'm looking at the Black Fury right now. Say you are a Black Fury, but you grow and change as a person, and suddenly you fit the Silver Fangs better.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think it also there's so much nuance to the tribes themselves. I think it also has to deal with specific social structures within the tribes themselves, because the specific instance of the Black Fury to the Silver Fangs might be a little bit harder than say a Bone Gnar to Children of Gaia, because of the social aspect of the Silver Fangs. They've got this, or at least they did in W20. I need to read through and see if they've got the same chip on their shoulder in W5.
We'll go further into the tribes in a minute here. I picked those two kind of specifically, one because I knew them, but also because they're very different.
Yeah.
That's why I said if you grow and change as a person and all of a sudden you do not feel like you fit with the Black Furies any longer, then do you go change, or are you stuck there? If it's a social thing, like, you should be able to go change. Again, by no means being easy, but you should be able to. It's the auspices that you can't.
Yeah. No, those are pretty set. I personally believe that it should be possible to change tribe. It would take a lot of effort and would probably you'd probably have to perform some sort of trial or feat to prove that you really do belong in that new tribe before you're fully accepted.
You would have to, would lose all of your standing and everything. You'd start from nothing again. Or less than nothing if you're on a one that they're like, what?
Yeah, there could be a lot of drawbacks to it that would outweigh the benefits. So it's an interesting question to consider, and I personally have not seen a hard and fast rule on it, so I believe it should be theoretically possible.
Okay, well, you know what I'm going to be doing with my guru, because, that's just what I do. I make things so fucking difficult for myself with characters. I like this little blurb right here, and I think I'm going to read this one out loud. The game concepts trait interrelation. As a player, think about the overlap of your auspice and tribe. Auspice and tribe can be said to be what you do and why you do it, respectively. Consider what those things say about your character and how they might inform your role-playing, even though they might find some common ground. A Glasswalker Ragabash and a Glasswalker Arun are two very different individuals, even though they might find some different common ground. A Glasswalker Arun and a Red Talon Arun are also two very different individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I was leaning on to where if that stated Glasswalker Arun and Red Talon Arun, the Glasswalker doesn't fit the Glasswalkers anymore because I think those are the tribe that does they bring the news around, right?
The Glasswalkers, they're the tech, very modern tribe.
So yeah, if a Glasswalker suddenly starts acting like a Red Talon and fits along more with that, then why are they a Glasswalker? Like you said, they're very different. It says they're very different, obviously, but what happens if you're no longer fit your tribe? It's an interesting thing, and I hope we'll see something about it later on in the book.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be nice to see what they say about that. Because I have to imagine it's come up at some point.
It depends, because if in W20 it was not a social thing and it was a bloodline thing, then it wouldn't have. But if they've moved it to being a more social thing, then it is. And I don't know why my camera is being so blurry tonight. I'm sorry. It's really frustrating because I don't know what's causing this. It's bothering me. I'm sorry.
Good.
Okay, so here, scrolling up a little bit. Hang on. So, a tribe is very much a spiritual alignment of finding a patron and declaring fidelity to them. Pledging to the patron spirit and joining a tribe is a relationship. In some cases, tribe can even have some amount of heredity to it. So you can have a hereditary aspect to it, but only as much as a distant relative who passed along some of the lessons of their patron spirit, or even as a mentor or something like that. But it doesn't say anything about changing there. But it does. There can be a slight hereditary thing to it. But anyway, do we want to start on the tribes?
Sure. And it, yeah. So it looks like we're starting with the Black Furies.
Yes. You don't have
These
to
were
pick
really
on someone
interesting.
your own size. Try picking on someone my size.
These were really interesting in W20 because they were based essentially off of the Furies from Greek mythology. The tribe got their start in W20 from a tribe of women in Greece, and they were very specific about they only took women, with very few exceptions. And so let's see how they've changed.
At their best, the Black Furies want to set the balance right, provoke them too greatly, however, and the Black Furies pursue justice at all costs. After all, there's no value in convincing the chemical plant to jump a little less toxic runoff into the river. Just burn the whole fucking thing to the ground.
Very all or nothing attitude.
Yes. Initially, they definitely looked like they align with the Bruja, but absolutely with the Banu. But so much more.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we've got such highlighted words as liberate, overcome, dismantle, and demolish.
Which does, again, make me think of like the Bruja. Like the, not one-to-one, obviously, but like kind of picking generics, like what is close to this. Like initially, it sounds like Bruja, but oh no, this is definitely a Banu version of a guru.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that at all
And
costs is. Oh shit! Demolish a cairn that's too tainted by its previous occupiers to reclaim. Yeah, nope, that's not. That's a.
It's a thing.
Is a thing.
Their enthusiasm puts Black Furies at the forefront of many meaningful conflicts, whether high visibility, well-attended causes dear to the public, or the well-hidden, green-washed backroom deals where some unaware and unlucky soul is left holding the bag.
Of course, setting things right
They
often
are.
has a very different meaning for Guru than it does humans. Yeah.
And that is a very interesting distinction to explore.
Especially now. Especially now that there isn't the hereditary aspect behind Guru. You were a human that randomly transformed. And to get to the point where you're done giving a fuck about humanity to a massive degree is a very interesting thing to witness, I think.
Definitely.
Any other thoughts on the Black Furies?
I will say the patron spirit is the Gorgon, so that kind of alludes back to what I was talking about, their original W20.
I forgot that there was another page for it. I'm sorry.
It's all good. But yeah, you can see the
associated with glory.
Not acting against perceived abusive power is considered an act of neglect
by many of the members. So, favor, what was the favor and ban? Because we actually should probably touch on that before we move on farther.
Yeah, this is, I believe this is a relatively new mechanic. Either that or it's one that I didn't really get to read too much about from W20. I think it's relatively, it might be, I don't know, it might not be new.
I'm trying to scroll and find it.
Act structure, SEPs, minutes and other meetings, moot, hug loss, social repercussions. I don't know.
You know what? Why don't we hold off on the tribes and go back up and kind of pick up from where we left off?
Okay.
We'll wait on the tribe deep dives, but we'll go back to page. What is this?
40. Page 40 was where the auspices and tribes were.
Yeah, so we'll glance over the tribes themselves. We won't worry about that because we'll have a deep dive into those, so I'm not worried about those. But we can talk about the wayward tribes real fast.
Mm-hmm.
Although no, that would probably be better to do during the tribe as well. So skipping to becoming Guru.
Yeah. Gaia chooses. It's just that simple.
Yep. So,
And
what happens at what point? What happens at what point in previous human life to radically shift it to becoming guru life? That's kind of what we were just talking about. No one knows for sure of what makes a person become a guru.
And it's interesting because this is probably one of the biggest changes from W20 to W5, because in W20 there was, I'm sure y'all have heard all about it now, but there was this whole thing about breeding more soldiers essentially, and there were rules about guru can only mate with non-guru.
Yes.
And those that did spawned a deformed pseudo werewolf that was still a werewolf, but they treated him badly just because. And there was a lot of lineage playing into that. The Shadow Lords and the Silver Talons specifically were very about keeping the bloodline and tracked their progeny very carefully.
Yes.
Very Ventru-esque.
Yes.
Children of Gaia, not so much. But
one of the things I really, really like here, and honestly, I would probably do this, is that some werewolves, I think most werewolves start as humans, but others come from actual wolves. I would fucking have a blast playing a werewolf that comes from a wolf. You just pop into being a Kranos form, and then suddenly you have a human form. How do you manage that? How do you learn?
Yeah, that is a very interesting side of werewolf that I don't think a lot of people explore enough. It's one thing to grow up in human society and then, I just have this thing, but I'm still technically a part of human society. What do you do when you were outside of the society and now all of a sudden you've got to be in it and you don't want to be in it because it's terrible?
You wouldn't have those complicated emotions that humans have. You wouldn't have but I used to be this, like, why the difficulty that can come from that. Like, I used to be human, like, why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? You're not going to have that as a wolf. You're going to be so confused as to why do I feel these now? Why do I feel like this now? How do you learn to talk? Is it just a magical thing you get, or do you actually have to learn to talk like a child does?
I'm sure you have to learn, because nowadays they have, what did they call them? Kin seekers that seek out newly transitioned werewolves and bring them into the fold. Which I think it's a more realistic way to do it than back in W20, where it was like all of the werewolves and their humans, everyone was aware of each other and everyone stayed together in this little tight-knit community, so everyone knew, that kid's gonna end up being a werewolf.
Yeah, I would be very interested in exploring that part of it. Like, absolutely, hands down.
Yeah, I hope they come out with more. I don't remember seeing more on kin seekers later on in the book. Oh
no, they have a thing for it.
Oh, they do? Okay, good. Yeah.
So now we'll move on to the first change, I think. Unless you're going to continue. I'm sorry.
Yes. No. I was just going to say, I hope there's more about them in there, because I want to see how that works mechanically. And I also want to see how that works within the lore, because if there's no way to tell for sure, how do they know?
Yeah, so I think they have a
it may be
paragraph on it later.
overt. Yeah.
I believe I saw that when I was scrolling. So the
Yeah.
first change is interesting. You turn into your Krynos form, your war form, and you lose yourself to the range, I think.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Basically just outright frenzy.
Not always, though. It's not always. Not every first change happens so dramatically. Some experience their first change by taking the shape of a wolf in their dream and then waking up as one. Or in communication with the place of natural beauty or something like that. So not every change is the war form, but it sounds like that's the vast majority of them.
It's pretty typical, yes. And
the change can happen at any time. It's typically a moment of tragedy or great emotion, which is probably why most of them are the war form, because that would absolutely trigger the rage if you don't know how to fight against it. But it does state that it pretty much always comes in late adolescence or early childhood. I'm sorry, not childhood, not childhood, adulthood, early adulthood.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you, it's funny that you had that slip of the tongue, because that's how it was back in W20. Is they changed young, like when they hit puberty is usually about the time you hit your first change. But now it's first changes before the age of maturity are all but unheard of. Now that does beg the question what they consider the age of maturity. And that is a very that can be a very socio-cultural dependent number.
So there is a point when you grow up, and it can happen late, like very late teens into the mid 20s, I think, where there's just a shift in your brain where you come to terms with the being not necessarily an adult, but you come to terms with no longer being a child.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily have to, it doesn't have to necessarily be like a full frontal, like, yes, I am a child no longer in your brain, but there's a shift that happens in the way you think and feel and handle things. That's probably what it is. And typically, obviously, depending on your life and what has happened in your life, late teens to mid to late 20s.
Mm-hmm. And while I definitely do not condone exploring the opposite of what I'm about to say, however, I do think it would be interesting to explore the social ramifications of a very late change. Like if someone was heavily traumatized to the point where they did not feel safe to begin to express themselves in an adult fashion until well into their late 20s, early 30s. How do you deal with that when everyone else is younger than you?
And you've already established
and already knows a lot more
in human life.
Yeah, that too. You've got more to lose. You've got more to learn, less time to learn it. It's going to be harder in some cases, depending on how old you are during that first change.
Well, in your 30s, if you pick your 30s, not always, obviously, but typically you have a fairly established job. Whether it's a good job or a bad job, you have an established job. You potentially have a career. You have a lot of people that you know. You can have a house, you have a dog, you have responsibilities in the mortal world. All of a sudden, boom, you're a werewolf. What do you do?
Depending on how you change, you're pretty much going to have no choice but go ahead and be a werewolf.
Obviously, but I'm saying, how do you handle that? Like when you're 20s, 18, 20s. What do you have going for you? You probably don't have an established job. You pretty much don't have a career. You're either getting out of high school, in college, or getting out of college. And yes, that can be a difficult change, but you're still not so established in life that you wouldn't be able to adapt. If you are in your 30s, how do you reconcile that? If you right now suddenly turned, you have a career, you're established in your life currently, and you can interact with people still, but you have something in you that is disgusted by them, what would you do? How would you handle that?
A lot.
I love this
A
about
lot.
the World of Darkness.
It really makes you think, and you can do it very early on. And it's amazing.
But here's the part about kin seekers. So yeah, they got rid of the breeding thing, which was problematic, but it's good they got rid of it. I don't 100% like that it's no longer hereditary, but I understand why they took that out.
I guess theoretically it could still be hereditary. It's just not as hard-nosed about it.
Right. It's not all but guaranteed that you produce a guru child if you have a child.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. But it still is the unceasing need during the apocalypse for more of Gaia's champions to fight in her name keeps many guru, even whole packs, on the prowl for emerging kin. The problem, of course, is that guru nature often emerges as a result of shock, trauma, terror, or self-preservation in the face of grievous harm. So there isn't a way to find them first. Let's see. It might be overt, with one or more of the kin seekers themselves shaping into the guru, themselves shape-shifting in the guru to be his presence, and even attacking them to find them. Which is interesting, because how do you do that? There's a very fun interaction with hunters there, now that they've built this change in, I think. Yeah, see, right here. I like this little paragraph. The practice, of course, has an even darker side that dragging unwilling werewolves into their new lives of shapeshifters. Those who suffer the provocation of kinseekers but aren't werewolves don't often survive to tell the tale, which makes it both existentially risky and ethically perilous to inflict such confrontation without forethought. And the ones that do survive now know. So what do you do there?
I mean, let's be real. How even if you do happen to find a guru, how willing do you think they're going to be to join? I mean, it says unwillingly, but like deep down, even if they do come, how well do you think they're going to take it if their introduction to society was being attacked by someone who is supposed to be one of their own?
Not at all. And then that's who's introducing you to guru life and society? Absolutely not. That heavily parallels the way a lot of the vampires turn their childer, which is really interesting to me because the guru fucking hate them.
It's definitely like a pot meets the kettle kind of a thing, and
Yes. There are a lot of parallels between them, which is really fascinating.
I want. Part of me wonders if they're doing that on purpose, or if it's just kind of a result of them trying to streamline the different games to work in a similar play style, in a similar world.
I mean, it's probably both. So now we're on to packs and tribes, family of choice, and finding a tribe.
Before we do that, though, I do want to read the Darker Doings thing, because this is new to the system,
Sure, go ahead.
if you don't mind.
No, I missed it. I wasn't scrolled up enough to see it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. There are other crueler ways to become a werewolf, but those other methods do not allow one to become Guru. A few depraved individuals or ones driven mad by seeking such forbidden knowledge, side-eyeing you, Tremere, do succeed in stealing the ability to shapeshift into wolf form and, for some, even something akin to the Krynos form. Known as stolen moons, these false werewolves are universally reviled among the Guru. I'm not going to read the way to attain the ability because that is not... It's a little gross.
I mean, you could... Acquiring a werewolf pelt
to
wear.
Yes. Once that is obtained, the individual must also perform a bleak and harrowing ritual to merge said pelt with their own to take on its properties. Yes.
Which they seem to have... Oh, they have antagonists built for that, which will be interesting to look at later. But that is interesting.
Yeah, that wasn't a thing in W20.
That's really interesting. It makes me curious. I wonder if they have a passage later about the Guru and the Gangrel. Because the Gangrel symbol is a wolf. They're very, very heavily paralleled with wolves and dogs in what they are and what they do. So I'm really interested to see if they have a passage on that later.
Yeah, definitely.
I would be disappointed if they don't. Especially with this Darker Moon thing. Or Stolen Moon thing.
Yeah. I can also see that being part of an expansion for the future, like specific relationships to specific entities and so on and so forth, if it's not already in here. Which, I mean, it's a dickums. So I would not.
It's a big book. I could see maybe them doing like Children of the Blood or the Blood Gods book. I could see them maybe doing something like that, but I really don't think that's something they're keen to do. Because we haven't gotten something like that for Vampire yet. But even if it's a small passage, I really would hope they explored that, just because the nature of that clan and the Guru is really similar. Like, I was explaining to my sister what the vampire clans were, and my explanation for Gangrel was the werewolf vampire. They have, when they lose control of themselves, rage, cough, they gain bestial, they gain animalistic features. How is that not so similar? And I think before they either reviled each other to like the utmost degree, or they would get along way more than any other worm-based creature with the Guru.
Yeah, I can see it going either way.
So I'm curious to know what they have that is in here. I will be right back, but you two can feel free to go.
Yeah, sure. So I think we should probably wait to move on to packs and tribes until Faye gets back. So, but what are you thinking so far, Nen?
Trying to come up with some character ideas. I'm also thinking up a couple Stolen Moon characters, like well, there was a right to it, so it probably wouldn't quite work out. But I'm definitely thinking a Tremere would definitely try to do the wolf form thing at some point.
Yeah. So, little peek behind the curtain for you there. I know I said cough, Tremere, cough because they've pulled that bullshit before in the past. But Gaia does not like abominations. In past iterations of werewolf, if a werewolf was bitten by a vampire, they would just die. Like, Gaia would not allow them to become a vampire. In recent iterations, they've become abominations, which are hunted to the ends of the earth by both vampire and werewolf kind. With the Stolen Moon, I think they would lean more towards abominations. If a full-blooded Tremere tried that, if it was a human mage, maybe that would fall more in line with the true Stolen Moon. But the whole idea of the Stolen Moon is that they're, as mentioned, they're not true werewolves and are unequivocally shunned by Guru society, such as it is, and are unequivocally antagonists because it revolves around having to kill a werewolf. And one of the big tenets of werewolf is don't kill your own kind because there's too damn few of us, as it is.
So they would be KOS.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it definitely, if we ran a game from the antagonist side of things, yeah, definitely, that'd be interesting to play. See how that fits into things, but as a standard quote unquote werewolf game, I don't know how.
And I'm assuming that it would feel different because they said they are not true Guru, and Guru can kind of get a sense of each other on the spirit level of things. So you could tell that something very corrupted would be happening there.
With that said, shall we move on to packs and tribes? Sorry. Started choking on air all of a sudden. I'll go ahead and read while you eat a little bit here. Packs and tribes, family of choice. This is the social aspect, like we kind of talked about. The socio-cultural, spiritual, all tied together. And yeah, here you go. It's a lot to take in. You're the modern scion of bloodthirsty monsters who are in fact secretly spiritual warriors charged with the defense of a dying world. But the world is filled with people who resent being defended in the way you're most adroit at doing it. No rest for the wicked. Finding a tribe. This is where it talks about the spiritual aptitude, forming a relationship with a patron spirit, pledging yourself to that patron spirit, and then becoming part of the tribe that is associated with that patron spirit.
So, yeah, let's go.
As one example.
Before I ask a question.
Yeah, and like that's just Yeah, some feel solidarity with a certain perspective and seek out the patron spirit and thus the tribe that best matches that perspective. Others describe having a vision or similar epiphany that indicates their tribe has chosen them rather than the reverse. Some have the benefit of a mentor, some learn through very bloody self-discovery. So there's no hard and fast way.
But it does look like there is a ritual.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That you don't get away from, which is probably happens in the Umbra or a dream version of the Umbra, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes on to talk about that in the next couple paragraphs. Whatever the case, the neophyte guru undergoes a ritual, makes a pledge, or otherwise associates themselves with their patron spirit, thus bonding them with that tribe. The transition usually occurs under the guidance of another guru, and quite often one who was present at their first change. A guru need not always bond with the same tribe as their guru mentor. Note. But this outcome is probably the most common one, which makes sense because they're the.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that makes sense considering they're the ones that were there at the beginning. They're the ones that probably had the most influence very early on.
I like this next sentence. The new werewolf likely spends at least some time as a member of the Mentor's Pack, assuming they don't join it permanently. So that
and there you
already
go.
says that you can change, just doesn't say the how.
Mm-hmm. Here's an interesting little bit, wolf life. Although many burgeoning werewolves attempt at a normal life after the first change, most find the challenge insurmountable. Smoldering rage risks turning an outburst to a massacre, and even if tempers are held in check, an ill-timed shapeshift risks subjecting friends and family to delirium.
We passed delirium. We'll go back and touch on it in a minute.
Yeah.
I think we passed it.
I think we've seen it yet. No, we haven't seen it yet.
And just as a partly codex of words to touch on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's farther down.
Yeah. It will be... maybe?
So...
it'll be talked about a little bit more thoroughly later.
So finding a pack... let's see. Pack dynamics are based on an array of potential born of the Auspice moon signs. In these desperate times, packs don't often have a member of each Auspice, but Guru Legend makes much more of a classical pack Auspice composition. So it's really interesting that you won't see everything in every pack. Or you'll have multiple of the same in a pack.
Mm-hmm. It really just depends on how big the pack is.
Yeah. And then they have pack types, which is Urbex, which seem to be city-based, occult investigators, which does kind of sound fun. The open road would be a really interesting one to just sweep it across the country. That's probably most often kin seekers, but traveling packs to bring news to other packs is a very interesting thought. Radical resistance, which is freedom fighters and eco-activists. And then the party animal, which is counterculture scene and nightlife movement. I kind of wish they had more, because these are all pretty much very heavily city-based.
Mm-hmm.
And not any, like, out-of-city things. Or nature-based ones, other than eco-activist.
It says that there's a few examples, so it's just a few examples, so I'm sure we could come up with...
No, for sure. I just wish they gave at least one that was based, like, heavily based outside of the city, outside of open road.
Yeah, fair. Having a little bit more diversity in what they present in the book would be.
Yeah. Like an
would be
example
helpful.
of something that's very heavily country based would be cool.
The classic cowboy posse.
Right. And then they go about names, which it just says they often set aside their human names or their wolf identities. Sometimes keep their first name, but then just pick a new name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Over time, Guru may choose to change their name again as many times as they feel like it to reflect their accomplishments and express their renown. Guru names may reflect the cultural norms and mother tongue of the Guru's homeland, or may be quite esoteric and even borrowed from the language of spirits. I will say one fun part of playing Werewolf back in the WtA era was earning legend names, as they were legend marks, legend names, as you went through the chronicle. And just seeing what came out of it.
We're reading so much from this chapter. I love this paragraph right here under the beautiful art. We call ourselves werewolves, but maybe that isn't entirely accurate. We're more like were-spirits, a human half and something else. Nature wild, hungry, and angry. The wolf is just the form it takes for us, I figure, summoned up from some primal memory of feral horrors lurking beyond the light of the fire. Guess that explains why we make people go nuts. But it makes you wonder about other places, other people. What form would the primeval wilderness take for a San hunter-gatherer or an Inuit whaler? That's interesting because it doesn't outright say other shifters don't exist. It's just, this is the most common one in the current era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, there used to be so many cool shifters and...
Well, that sentence right there just already says that they could still exist.
Yeah. In W20, after the quote unquote the purge, the most common Feyla, aside from the werewolves, to see were the were-ravens, the were-rats, were-bears, and a handful of were-sharks. And that was like it. And the were-coyotes to an extent, but them and the sharks were not very common.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on to the litany, which is basically their version of the masquerade.
Mm-hmm.
The Guru culture is pretty much only oral. So it's a lot of legends being passed down and like Aesop's fable type things, probably. Most Guru know the litany in some form, whether word for word or by story.
And
looks like it's typically passed around by philodoxes and galliards.
Yep. Philodoxes are great interpreters of the litany, and it often falls to them, especially when werewolves of many packs and backgrounds gather together to render judgments upon transgressors, thus shaping the sort of social justice that informs the customs of werewolves worldwide.
So, the litany has several parts to it. It's combat the worm wherever it dwells and where it thrives. Respect the territory of another. Accept an honorable surrender. Submit to those of higher station. Respect those of lower station, for all are of Gaia. The first share of the kill for greatest in station. Eat not the flesh of humans. The veil shall not be lifted. Veil being the masquerade.
Yeah, it's their don't let the normies know.
The leader may be challenged at any time during peace. The leader may not be challenged during wartime. And take no action that causes a cairn to be violated. Oddly, it doesn't specify don't kill other Guru. It says respect, but it doesn't outright say don't. Which is interesting.
Because from what
it could very easily say do not eat the flesh of humans or Guru. But it doesn't.
Yeah, there's been a little bit of controversy around that one, actually. Surprise! That goes back to one of the Werewolf 20 tribes where they actually had a thing about cannibalism that was heavily criticized even back then. Killing the Guru, it obviously happens with the Black Spiral dancers and stuff, especially, and inner conflict. But it's generally accepted that you don't, unless they're one of the specific sets of Guru that are on the outs with the greater culture, then you don't really.
Well, it says right here,
kill them unless they have to.
The tenet, the leader may not be challenged during wartime, is practically an invitation for authoritarianism because when you're a Guru, it's always wartime.
Mm-hmm.
And submission to those of higher station just makes it to where you can't question people.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
That's...
Tonight, and this is in the changing ways thing, tonight Gaia needs more than murderous maniacs, which is one of the tragedies of the Guru, in that they are so prone to rage. Rage cannot solve every problem. So each Guru needs to find how they can best fulfill their spiritual charge, or whether they must abandon it. Which makes an interesting case, because what happens when a Guru abandons that? Which they have a whole thing for, I know, but it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But we will.
And I'm kind of surprised. I was just saying, I'm kind of surprised it didn't come up until V5.
Yeah. The rules were a little bit different there. They had to. They were driven to, I think. Here, not so much. It's a cultural expectation, but not your spirit is forcing you, the spirit patron is forcing you to be like this. So it's interesting. And I very much am looking forward to a deep dive on the 2 new things they've added into here later. But that's for later. Right now, we have social structures among the Guru. The first part is just they can be good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And just the next part where Candace just talks about how it's difficult to fit in, but most Guru are happy to make room for another packmate, but not all of them. The pack is critical to success. Werewolves fight as a pack, protect the packmates, and perform rites as a pack. Structure.
A leader may emerge, be elected, or have the duty passed on to them by a leader who chooses to step down, all generally as a result of the purpose a pack chooses for itself.
Yeah. And then the Sept. Multiple packs come together to defend a cairn. That's what's a Sept. Just multiple packs converging but not merging. Things get interesting when the Sept is involved.
A lot of cooks in the kitchen at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. They also have a thing in here where you can be part of a Sept that you owe allegiance to, but also have your own pack. Very similar to like a barony, kind of. But it also says it's destinations to which Guru can travel. Which is really cool, because if you're in a new city, you would find a Sept to not house you necessarily, but where you can figure out what's what there. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then it gives 2 noticeable Septs, which is of the Green and of the Wheel of Ta.
Oh, looks like we lost Ned.
Yep.
There's a couple more on the next page.
Blood Fist and Hell's Hand Hive.
Black Spiral Dancer Hive.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Hee. That Blood Fist one. Interesting.
Definitely.
And then there's complication within Septs. And then the Moot, which is when multiple packs convene to address an imminent concern more than a Sept. A Sept is just probably a couple coming together. A Moot is many. And not all of them are to deal with crises. It says here that some are lingering traditions from the times before the Guru Nation collapse. So that's interesting that they actually reference it there.
Yeah, moots are pretty interesting. Alright, I'm just reading through here.
That's fine. And then they give examples of how it can come up in a story, which social interaction with other Guru, violent conflicts with other Guru, and communicate information, which is interesting. I like that one a lot because it's coming together to pass on news and stories.
Yeah. I've seen it done quite a few times where a story will start, especially for like brand new players, a story will start at a moot where they're essentially assigned a pack and an elder to take care of them and teach them the ropes, essentially, as part of like this quote unquote coming of age ceremony that's part of the moot, the social aspect of the moot.
Which is
that's a very common intro to it.
One of the best and easiest ways to start that.
Mm-hmm.
It's you all meet in a tavern for for werewolves.
You all meet in the woods.
Yeah. Then it goes to talk about different perils that can happen there. And oh boy, the thing I wanted to talk about the most. It is 11:30 though, so do you want to save this for the next one? Because I feel like you and I could talk about this for a while.
Yeah, that might be a good idea to call it here, and then we can start with Hirano and Hoglosk at the next one. That way we have plenty of time to go at it.
I really feel like this is something we could talk a lot about.
Oh, absolutely. So. It really is.
So yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We bounced around a little bit. A lot of quoting from the book on this one, but this one just has so many beautifully written paragraphs.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, see you next time. It might be a minute before we do our next deep dive, but things are coming there's some change happening within our structure for our games in the next month or so, so we'll have time to do more of these deep dives, which we're all very excited about. So keep an eye on that. Join us on our social medias if you want to be the first to be updated about those changes and see what the changes actually are. You can find the links down below in our link tree. Total Party Crit link tree, and pretty much at Total Party Crit for everything else. You can find us, listen to us. Let us know what you feel about the tribes and Auspice. Let us know what your vampire characters would be if they were suddenly somehow Garou. Be super interested to know about everyone's character and even the reasons why. So please let us know, because we want to know. Have a good evening and farewell.